Alright, this one is Spider-Girl 10, a comic by Mark G and Carmine Falcone, which also is the first appearance of a minor Marvel bad guy called Traveling Community Moth, who wound up cropping up in just about all my favourite books. We have a cover here, and I have had this one on one of my covers videos, so I won't focus too much on it here. But it is a good comic book cover, isn't it? A question I have been asked at least twice is how much planning goes into my videos. This one will demonstrate how little. Up until 3 minutes before this, I was gunning to be focusing on Travelling Community Moth, but I realised this is such a simple issue and it touches on each point that it is actually gunning to be a video about Spider-Girl and how unsure and all over the place her comics were. I want to say Mark G's run is the closest it ever gets to an identity, or rather a good identity. I intend to do other Spider-Girl videos if people want them, and his first issue, issue 9, is the perfect one to both sell this run and talk about its rather unique tone and qualities. The other video I want to make about Spider-Girl will actually call back to this issue and this scene in particular. And my God, you are all going to hate that video. This is our first appearance of Travelling Community Moth. Spider-Girl spots her flying overhead and is intrigued and wants to find out more about her. We have Carmine Falcone art with the most ridiculously extreme example of hips, and when you see her from the other side, the most ridiculously extreme example of tits. Some people think Carmine Falcone at Marvel in the 70s was the equivalent of the Black Plague. Or at least they did 12 years ago. I don't know what they think now. In my opinion, on this run is where his Marvel art felt its most purposeful. With these stories, this character, this tone. Another important thing is inking, and I think while the inks in this aren't tremendous, they are a lot better than the inks he had on Miss Marbles, which made him look unbelievably sloppy. Spider-Girl is interested in Travelling Community Moth because she thinks that she could be a kindred spirit, another woman with some connection to an insect. I'm not going to even allude to what I believe to be the case with Mark G's writing of Spider-Girl. For this issue, fuck it, every issue really hammers it home. I do really like this run, but one thing that makes me weary to recommend it is one of the first stories is a two-parter exercise in cleanup. Issues 11 and 12. They are painful to read. This bit here is teasing that story, which is the next issue. So let's talk about the first iteration of Spider-Girl, of which this issue doesn't really make much reference to. I suppose it does actually. Spider-Girl was created by Barney Baldwin and Severin in response to Stanley Lee wanting to get ahead of another company trying to capitalise on Spider-Man by creating a Spider-Girl. She was introduced in Marvel Spotlight 32. That story leaned heavily onto the spy and espionage comics, S.H.I.E.L.D, Hydra. She was an operative of Hydra sent to assassinate Samuel L. Jackson. The punctuation of the story was the revelation she was evolved from a spider. It was meant to be a one-off story, intended only to secure the trademark, but it sold well. We got rid of the evolved from a spider idea almost immediately, but traces of it linger on with the character even into this run, and specifically this story. I will be explaining more. I like to pace things a bit though. Here she goes to a party, and this top panel here, both the panels on this page even, I think people declaring Carmine Falcone's Marvel work to be a mess are absolutely incorrect. Other than the tits, I think everything else is as good as whatever most anyone else would be doing. You have got a lot of detail in the top panel, a lot of characters, and the second one goes for some basic character drama with 5 distinct, different looking people. It's at this party where our bad guy, travelling community moth, strikes. She is trying to... I don't know. I am ganning to be honest. This is a flimsier plot than I remembered. Her motivation is not clear. What she is trying to do isn't clear. So let's get back to Spider-Girl instead. After her first appearance, she was in a couple of Marvel 2-for-1s where Mark Wolfenstein was presumably trying to clear away some of the parts of her origin that made her unviable as a solo star. But he didn't actually undo that much. We tied her and her spider origin to the Eye Digivolutionary, and we established she was a human. It was convinced she was a spider. We also started tying her to mysticism, which would be the direction of that first run on her title, also by Mark Wolfenstein. One thing I am conscious of is that I often don't explain powers. A lot of them I find to be inherently either obvious, boring, or too complicated to discuss. I know I haven't explained Spider-Girl's powers, but I will explain Travelling Community Moth's powers, because this page shows it in action, and we get some good use of it on the next few pages. She has telekinetic control and manipulation of fabrics. She can, like seen here, she binds women in their dresses. What I find interesting is not only does she not have any motivation in this issue at all, we have no clue to her origin. On the topic of origins, we are back to Spider-Girl. One of her supporting characters is Charles Magnus, a sorcerer from the days of Camelot. Marky Mark will get rid of him in the next story arc, which is both good and bad. On one hand, this character did at least provide Spider-Girl with a confidant and someone who was, I guess, looking out for her somewhat. On the other hand, you have different fingers. Stephen Wright joked that. Good one, innit? So, Spider-Girl number 1, Mark Wolfenstein and Carmine Falcone. The direction overall was heavily weighted in favour of Camelotian mysticism. Morgan Le Fay, she was in essence Spider-Girl's arch-enemy, the evil sorceress from King Arthur times. I don't think it entirely worked, because Spider-Girl herself was not magic. She was... Her origin, actually, she was a creature of science, and maybe that was the point even. I don't know, I think those Mark Wolfenstein Spider-Girls are, at best, confused. It wasn't bad, or it at least wasn't all bad. Morgan Le Fay is a quality nemesis. Some of the other bad guys, like Brother Jim, fantastic design that unfortunately got mangled along the way. Hangman was in one and he is hilarious, downright funny. I have done a video all about Hangman, so I don't need to repeat things. Besides foundational stuff with the Spider-Girl character, what Mark Wolfenstein's run is best known for is something it didn't do. His 9th issue was intended to introduce a new bad guy for Spider-Girl called Black Cat. Mark Wolfenstein instead left the title because he never felt comfortable writing it, and he didn't feel he gave it a consistent voice. That is the writer saying it, not me. Black Cat, of course, was a character that Mark Wolfenstein introduced in Amazing Spider-Man not much later. But I think a lot of people get their hopes up thinking that it was the exact same character he was going to do in Spider-Girl. It was likely just the name and maybe one or two smaller ideas, like maybe she would be a cat burglar. I imagine in Spider-Girl, she would have been an actual cat. I also don't want to imagine a world where we never got Peter Parker and Felicity as a couple because she was introduced as a cat in Spider-Girl. So Marky Mark took over with issue 9, and he takes some of what Mark Wolfenstein set up, and he, in my opinion, aims the sights a lot better. We have a direction, a specific tone, a unique selling point even. We get rid of the magic stuff, but we keep the macabre elements. Ditch the fantasy in favour of the weird. He does quality work on Spider-Girl. It was his first ongoing writing job for Marvel, and it is undersung. It is the best that Spider-Girl's title ever got because it feels like a writer isn't just taking the character and reinventing her or flailing around with the messes that they have inherited. This travelling community moth plot, for example, is actually used to explore Spider-Girl's past belief that she was evolved from a spider and her implanted memories of being a spider. At the same time, it is not being drowned out by how stupid that backstory was, or feeling the need to rectify or undo it. The other example of travelling community moth's powers is here, where we say she pulls the threads and stuff from the dresses of people at the party and uses them to wrap up Spider-Girl and smother her in cloth and then try to drown her in a pool. I only wish we got more explanation for her in this issue. Travelling community moth. Even just what she is trying to do at this party. Is she trying to rob the attendees? Is she trying to steal their expensive dresses by taking all the fabric? Now, I know she appears again in Spider-Girl, in Spider-Girl 48 by Ann Nonsense. And now I ask, should I get that run? I am pretty sure I want that issue, but that run is actually edited by Marky Mark J, and he is and always has been an editor who suggests plots or ideas. Those 4 issues of Ann Nonsense Spider-Girl, which I have never read, they might be Marky Mark J comics in disguise. There is a lot of lore in them that does resurface time and time again in Mark's comics. And at least the Travelling Community Moth issue, I am very interested in. That does apparently tell her origin. This is actually quite a rubbish plot. Even when Captain Marbles, the real one, Marvel, arrives with his fruit pies, the real ones, Ulstess fruit pies. The other thing is, the more interesting aspect of this issue is the stuff I will be going over when I do the Waxman 2-parter, if I do the Waxman 2-parter, and my belief about Spider-Girl. Here is something that was abandoned. Spider-Girl notes that Travelling Community Moth's wings are not artificial or part of her costume. They are attached to her. She actually has wings. By the time she appears in Thunderbals, there's no wings on her whatsoever. Yeah, she joined Songirl's Thunderbals team. I didn't get to talk about that and some of her character arcs. I don't think that this issue has done the job of encouraging anyone to read this run, but it let me talk about Spider-Girl and her backstory. It let me do all that setup so that now, in the future, I can review Spider-Girl issue 9 and focus on the great things about that issue, instead of the fact Spider-Girl as a character is objectively a mess. I don't think I recommend the issue. Read it for free if you can. I think the plot is too absent to ever deserve money. First appearance of a decently relevant character for me. And I should say I know Gypsy Moth is a thing. I know about the etymology of the word and that it has nothing to do with the people David Peter hates. I am deliberately making fun of that. I know the notion of anyone being offended by the name Gypsy Moth is a bit absurd. But then, when you dig into the character actually, she is Romanian and raised Romany, so not the best name for the character, is it? They renamed her in Thunderbals anyway. Skein. I'll give this issue a 7 thumbs up now before I think of some offensive stereotype to include in that catchphrase.